I think if we simplify things and make sure those pain points are taken away, then our performance will shine. If someone's got it in them, it will come out and will shine.
It's within your gift. Decide, try and test different things for yourself personally. What works, as Andreas said, keep it simple, but just I encourage everyone to just test and try what works and what doesn't work for them day to day.
Be brave and try and be a little bit bold and different too, because that will keep you curious and keep you learning.
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Helping People Perform. This is our first panel event where I've got three amazing guests who have a shared history but are now doing their own thing in the world of helping people perform, in that people element in particular. We have today founder at Citta Performance, Neeha Khurana. So welcome, Neeha.
Thank you, Paul. Happy to be here.
Fantastic to have you. We also have Global Head of Learning and Leadership Development at Rolls-Royce, Mary Glowacka.
Hi, thanks, Paul, for having us.
Welcome, Mary. And finally, but not last but not least, we have the Senior Director of People in all sorts of wonderful aspects of people in analytics at Preply. Welcome to the show today, Andreas Kyprianou.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Great to be here, particularly with Mary and Neeha.
Yeah, you three have an amazing shared history together. And what I'd like to do to start this off is really just to get a feel from each of you as to where your career went and how you share, where you got to in terms of that shared experience and where you are right now. So Neeha, maybe we could start with you in terms of what's that potted history of your story and your career journey?
Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about me, and then the more interesting part is around how Mary, Andreas, and myself got together. So to point out, first of all, I'm a mother of two. That is a really important component of me and who I am. I'm a chartered psychologist, executive and team coach. I've had an incredible 25 years experience in all things people, from being a head of HR through to a head of talent management, across a breadth of industries. So I've had a real opportunity to learn from a breadth of people, whether that be in financial services, which is where we all met,
yep.
Whether it's in tech or in consulting or in public services. So 25 years leading big teams, also doing things individually. But also then a couple of years ago, as I was working for an incredibly entrepreneurial company, they encouraged me to open up my own thing. So I was double hatting, and I was doing a job of culture and leadership, global head of, in a very fast-paced tech company, building everything from scratch. And in the same breath, I was playing on the side as an executive coach in Citta Performance, and then recently decided that I would take the plunge and open up fully as a founder. And so that has been very, very exciting. But along the way has been an incredible number of people from whom I've learned and who I had the pleasure of being on my team. And so Mary, Andreas, and I, and of course, Rachel, who you know very well, Paul, who made the connection for us, we all had the pleasure of working at Bank of America together. And so that is our connection. So I'll share that bit of the story, and then I'll pass the baton on. Maybe I'll pass on to Andreas, and he can continue the story and tell us a little bit about him too.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Neeha. Yeah, very, very hard to follow, Neeha. So, Mary, I drew the short straw. Thanks, Neeha. So yes, I'm Andreas. So I've been in the people space just short of about 15 years or so. Not coming from a traditional people background. I did a little bit of everything before landing on people. I did operations, I did finance, and then landed in the people space kind of about probably 10 to 12 years ago, when analytics really started taking off. So, my geeky love of numbers has really helped me since build my career in all things people, particularly analytics, and the highlights of my career were definitely working in the financial services in a team with Neha and Mary. Since that, I've made a conscious effort to downsize my companies. I've always wanted to work for a startup where I could see things move at an incredible pace. So since leaving the bank, I've worked for, downsized to Facebook, if you can call that downsizing. And then since then, a variety of roles have led me to my current role at Preply, which when I joined, we were very small, about 200 people, and now almost 700, in the 3 years of being here. And I run what some might call the not sexy areas of HR. So things like people ops and rewards and systems and analytics. I think they are, I consider them very, very sexy, as we can no doubt discuss later on in the show, on our chat. And I've also had the pleasure of having Mary come and also work with me for a period of time, growing the company before she went off to her new gig, which she'll tell you about. And we've stayed in touch with Neha throughout kind of this journey, and I'm really, really excited to see her really branching out and doing her own thing. So exciting. So over to Mary.
And just a quick question, Andreas, for the audience who may not know, Preply, can you give us a little overview?
Preply, of course. Preply is an EdTech, so we're an educational technology. We match tutors and students on our platform for primarily language learning. So it's a language learning platform, but there are many other stuff that we do, not just the teaching languages, but yeah, it's live one-to-one learning of languages, and we and our business model depends on matching the tutors and the learners together. Really exciting. We have the biggest number of tutors in the EdTech world right now, and still growing.
Wonderful stuff. Really appreciate that. And Mary, let's go to you. Tell us your story.
I'll bring us home today, Paul. Yes, so we are very much connected with Neha, Andreas, and it's been probably one of the biggest privileges for me personally in my career journey, because it doesn't happen that often that you build such strong connections for so many years. So yes, I am currently at Rolls-Royce. I will demystify it a little bit because I am asked this question all the time. Not the car. And the car is actually owned by BMW, and it has since 1984.
Yeah.
So Rolls-Royce defense, civil and power systems. We are on a transformation journey right now, triggered by the appointment of our new CEO last year in January. And then I followed a few months later and joined the strategic transformation team under our new CEO, and yes, leading on learning and leadership development. But previously, similarly a little bit to Andreas, I have a bit of an atypical journey into the people space, coming from operations originally, and then I kind of fell into the world of training and learning, and I really fell in love with it.
Yeah.
I could see what difference it can really make to people, not only in the workplace, but outside of it as well. So I developed a great love for this world, and my journey took me to a few different industries by design, because a little bit like Neha and Andreas, I deliberately wanted to expose myself to everything and anything. So I've previously held similar roles in the consulting world at EY, and then met with Andreas and Neha, who very kindly gave me the opportunity to join Bank of America at the time, and then a couple of other companies, including a stint with Andreas in the scale-up world. And my journey took me back now to the corporate world, because mostly really what I'm passionate about from a learning and leadership development perspective is helping companies in times of broad and deep change and transformation, who are really serious about transformation through people. So that's where I am today, and again, just wonderful to be with everybody today.
Fantastic, and thanks so much, Mary, and the other two of you as well, because this is such an amazing opportunity to have so many experiences, but such a depth and breadth of experience across the whole board as well. You know, we have all that experience coming from your past, but also in the roles that you do. We were talking about this now. Neha, probably more of a cross-functional, cross-industry view in your current role. Andreas, in that sort of startup scale-up world at the moment. And Mary, as you said, going back into that corporate world. So, you know, all of this, the big focus of this podcast for me is about helping people perform, and who are the people who are going out there and helping others to perform at their best. And where better to have that leverage than in the people function? And such an amazing sort of wealth of experience joining us today. So really appreciate all the three of you being on the show today. So I'm going to start off, this is slightly different to some of the other episodes for our listeners. Instead of the standard format, shall I say, that I would use here, I'm going to ask a few sort of individual questions of my guests, and then we'll have a sort of panel discussion off the back of that as well. So I'm going to start off maybe addressing this to yourself, Neha. Thinking about, in that world of the people function and world of people, what are some of the main challenges and opportunities that are being faced out there in the industry as you see them at the moment?
So Paul, it's an interesting one as I think about where I've also come from in terms of my previous company that I was working at. It was starting from scratch, hyper growth, very attractive organization, yet in the same breath, still struggling to attract and keep the talent within the organization. Right. Which caused us to ask lots of questions. And actually many of the clients I'm working with right now as well are asking similar questions. Has something changed post-pandemic? Is there something different going on for people and the choices that they're making, how they want to spend their time? And while organizations are really well equipped with what I call building stuff in the people function, I wonder whether, and I've been pushing some of my clients on this, I wonder whether it's time for organizations to spend a little bit more time thinking about who they are and what they really want to be famous for in the people space. Because I think it helps the organization, on the one hand, to really figure out, I guess, what we call the EVP, what's the give and the get.
Yep.
The organization can then put out a message that says, look, this is what we're all about. It's gonna, and then you can kind of complete the story. It attracts a certain kind of talent. And I think for the talent out there, if it is clear to you what an organization is offering you, and it meets with your desires, your hopes, your dreams, then that's a really good starting point, I think, right? Enter the organization, eyes wide open. But I also think there's a piece in here also around the culture of the organization and to what extent the culture matches that EVP or that promise. And I think it's very easy to introduce something and say, this is what we're all about from an EVP perspective. These are our leadership principles. These are our collaboration principles. You name it, whatever model it is that the organization has developed. I think actually focusing on building an inclusive culture. And I'm sure we've all been reading in the press around the challenges around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you know, the kind of pushback and pullback from some of the traditional initiatives around the diversity space. And of course, DEI is really, really important in helping people to perform. If you are in an environment where you feel included, so that's where I think is the challenge and the opportunity to change a narrative, to change a discussion. Which for me actually has always been the discussion. How do you create an inclusive environment where everybody can bring their lived experiences, their skills, their perspectives, so that they can give their best?
Right.
So I think that's another big challenge and opportunity to not walk away from DEI, but to lean into building an inclusive culture where everyone can bring themselves. I think the other big area that I've been discussing a lot with my clients is around leadership capability. I have a real passion, as Mary and Andreas know, around building exceptional leadership. And I'm really intentional in using that word, right? Being a leader is a privilege. And I think if you take on that privilege, you should be leaning into being exceptional at that. And of course, you know, leadership development programs, executive coaching, all of those things, of course, they're great. But some of the conversations I'm starting to have with some of my clients now is to take a step back and say, actually, the job of a people leader, of a leader, it's tough. There are a lot of demands on leaders. And is it time for us to really look at the environment and really challenge ourselves and ask, to what extent have we created an environment where leaders can thrive, where they can put their own gas masks on first before they can do all of the important things that we expect them to do to help people perform? And to what extent have we created environments where individuals can say, I'm struggling, I can't do this leadership thing. And is it okay if I give that up and I'm just an expert contributor, an expert contributor, because it's equally valuable.
Yeah.
And actually, wouldn't it be better for you to be playing in that space rather than filling up a leadership position that perhaps you just don't want to do? And we all know on this call the impact of not having great leaders in roles to help us magnify our culture. So that's a couple of things, 2 or 3 things that I'm really hearing right now. And I have no doubt that Andreas and Mary have others to add as well.
Thanks so much, Neha. Let's open it up to the group then. Maybe Andreas, what have you got?
I think that's fascinating. I'm going to piggyback. Neha talked so much about that lean, that culture fit and EVP, both for leaders and everybody else. I'm just going to focus on particularly the people teams, but piggybacking off the point of Neha's point around. It has felt in the last few years that there's a particular interesting cognitive dissonance going on in the people teams around organizations based on the intensity of the last few years on people teams directly, right? We've had just me in my career in the last 3 years, so well, most of us, we've had things like COVID, right? We've had COVID, we had Brexit, we had restructures or multiple layoffs. Indeed, when Mary and I were probably, we still have it. We had the Ukrainian war to deal with, right? And it feels like there's an interesting dissonance on the people teams where for some people it has led to burnout and they're just tired, right? And we need to enable them to become less tired, right? And leaders are key in that. Whilst for others, it's actually a reevaluation of what HR actually is, right? And how important HR is. We keep talking about how important HR is, but it seems to only come out, right, when there are crisis situations, right? Yeah. So, for some people going back to the more mundane aspects of HR day to day, I don't know, running a good onboarding program can become frustrating, right? After all that intensity, right? I'll use the analogy. I know you used to work for in F1, right, Paul? So I use the analogy. It's kind of like going from a Red Bull or a McLaren car back to one of the back marker teams, right? And so I feel that we need to really give the space and the effort for those people teams to really evaluate what their EVP is, as Neha was saying, right? Why am I in the people space? It's a different opportunity for everybody to ask themselves, why am I doing this, right? Why am I in the people space? So that's one thing. The other one for me, the big challenge, and I'll be brief here, I think both challenge and opportunity. It's much more practical, from my perspective. I've seen a massive proliferation of tools that claim to help the people space, right? The HR tech world has never been hotter, particularly the one that use AI somewhere in their descriptions, right? A lot of them are actually great tools, but I think the sheer proliferation of these, and together with that, many of the decision makers in HR sometimes are not technical enough to understand the implications of all of these multiple systems. I think it leads to some really interesting and frustrating situations. So I think there's definitely a massive opportunity here of upskilling, and I'm sure Mary will have something to say about upskilling people and people teams on technological innovations, right? And how these can practically help, right? Not be a panacea, like a tool will not help you be a better people leader, right? But a tool can enable you, right, to ease the burdens on you so you can, do what Neha says and be a true people leader.
Wonderful. Yeah, I fully agree on that front. And as you say, that my background in that high performance world of F1, it speaks to all of this, the importance of diversity and inclusion, that the inclusivity element, but the ability for people to bring their whole selves and their whole value. If you're missing out on individuals' value, then your team value and your organizational value is also going to be diminished as well. So, yeah, I see some wonderful stuff there. So, Mary, how would you build on those amazing points from Neha and Andreas there?
Yes, lots of things on my mind right now, inspired by what Andreas and Neha were saying. that grown-up relationship, between all the people in the organization, for me, is something that Neha alluded to. And we're living through this right now at Rolls-Royce, where the expectation of what the future of the organization needs to look like for it to have another 117 successful years of tenure, needs to look like. And we're making those expectations really, really clear. And sometimes it may feel a little bit brutal, not because of how that message is sent, but I don't think that many organizations are actually, and people within those organizations are actually used to hearing quite transparent and very clear expectations, to the point of, this is the future that we want and need to shape. And everybody is welcome to co-create that future. And if you don't like the sound or the look of that future, then it's okay for you not to be part of this future. And it doesn't have to end up in conflict. It's a grown-up one-to-one decision, right? And it's within your gift to make that decision, and no one is going to either judge you or have a problem with whatever decision you make. However, if you make a decision that you want to be part of this journey, then there are certain conditions that need to be met so that we can collectively actually arrive at that future, or continue building that future together. So for me, that's really, really a big, a big challenge in organizations. That level of grown-up transparency and expectation setting. And I am very proud, actually, that we as an organization are doing that. And I want to also pick on one of Neha's points on the leadership, because of course, I'm very passionate about it. I believe that leadership can make or break an organization and people within it. That's why I do what I do, to be honest with you. And that's what we're doing with our leadership, not just leadership in the traditional sense, people who actually hold people leadership roles, but the message is clear and consistent to everybody, whether you are in an official people leadership role or not. There is a certain set of expectations of how we go about doing things. The what can change daily, weekly, monthly, whatever, but the how should be consistent. And we have very, very clear expectations in that sense. The other thing that I would add, I think Andreas alluded to, and I'll just build on it a little bit. The challenge is, how do we get people to the point that they really appreciate that learning, and learning fast, is a non-negotiable, and it's not a nice thing to have. And I think a lot of it actually boils down to people's personal relationship with change. If your relationship with change is such that you expect change to be something finite that has a stop and an end, then, for instance, when that change is not coming, or that end point is not coming, you start getting a bit maybe irate or anxious, and so on and so on, and you desperately try to hold on to status quo. Whereby, if the relationship with change is such that it's a continuum, and life, simply speaking, is change, then you also adapt your ways of operating in the workspace every single day. And you do appreciate that, for example, past experiences, whilst important, things have changed. Things have changed since we were at Bank of America. I'm sure Andreas would approach people analytics in many different ways now than he did back then, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We are evolving. So yeah, so I'll stop there, Paul.
So many amazing points, and I love the couple of things I've just noted down here. I love that point of the grown-up conversations. This is something that we all need to have, and I'll often see this in businesses as well, where people are afraid to have those difficult or perceptively difficult conversations. They're not always actually difficult, and people often want them to be had. It's just both sides want the same thing, but they assume that the other one doesn't want to have the conversation. But actually having those grown-up conversations about what is it, where are we going, are you on board, how do we get you on board, how do we support you? So some amazing points throughout all of that. So let's follow this up then, and Mary, let's stick with you on this one in terms of, if those are the challenges and the opportunities that are there for people, what is the actual role of the people function in helping to make this happen and create and maintain this high performance organization?
Find out what the barriers are to how work gets done and remove them. I'm being very simple here, but we can use a lot of words here, right? Enablement and so on. But for me, it's essentially the role is to sit behind the scenes. You're not supposed to be the star of the show. You are there as an organization, as a people organization, to help your people in the organization be the best that they can be. And do the things that they're not only good at doing, but the things that they may want to do in the future. So they can contribute in many different ways throughout many, many years if that's their choice in these organizations. And what we do as a people function is be those strategic advisors. But what is even more so important to me is to be a strategic practitioner. To give practical counsel to your business leaders, to talk not about the what needs to be done, but actually how do we make it happen, and not just make it happen so we can tap ourselves on the back and say, yeah, I made some decisions, I spent 2 million and I'm happy. But how we go about making sure that it sticks, that it makes sense, that this is really what people want. And I also don't believe that our function should be making those decisions, in silos. We are there to get the feedback, get the intelligence from the business and figure it out, and together with them, and sometimes in a perhaps more authoritative way. But that's also what we're here to do. There's a lot of conversations that I'm having with leaders at Rolls-Royce. I'm still quite new to the organization, so continuously building those relationships. And a big part of that, I'm asked very often, Mary, what can HR do for me that I can't do myself? These are actual questions that I'm asked, and I really welcome those questions, because to your point, Paul, it can be a difficult question if you don't embrace it as an opportunity to enter into a grown-up dialogue, right? And sometimes it works actually to be very blunt. It depends on the makeup of your organization as well. I mean, my organization is an engineering and manufacturing predominantly, right? And people do like to talk straight. So they do respond really well to, I'm not here to be your order taker. I'm not here to say yes. I'm here to help you. And the only way that it's going to work is if we build a symbiotic relationship and we respect each other's expertise. Maybe that will be it for now. Well, let's hear from others.
No, wonderful point, and I particularly like your opening gambit there in terms of this is identifying and removing those barriers. It's like, what are the things that are stopping this business being a high performing business in terms of its people, and what can we do as a function to remove some of those barriers? So, Neha, what's your perspective on this? How do you see the role of people and the people function?
Say that Andreas, Mary, and I have kept in touch over the many, many years, because I think this idea of being able to think big at that organizational level, Mary called it, that kind of strategic practitioner, but in the same breath, being able to get into the detail and to be really thoughtful about balancing best practices, bold practices, and practically what is going to help the organization. All of that Mary said resonates. But what she got me thinking about was the skills that I believe the people within the people function need to have and need to develop. I think as I've gone through my career, bravery is a word that I think comes up a lot. This having the confidence to put out the difficult observation, having the confidence to actually push back on an idea that you just know is just more stuff. It's not actually going to solve the issues that are on the table and help the organization to grow and to perform. And I also think there is something about being the moral compass without putting us too much on this kind of pedestal. But I think in the craziness of organizations, quite rightly, right? Organizations are there to grow and to perform and to be successful. They are responsible for many, many people. And so there has to be that side to an organization. But I think for people practitioners to be able to sit there and say, does this feel like the right thing to be doing? And if it doesn't, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to tell you that. And I'm going to work really hard to build some trust here so that you know I'm doing this for the benefit of the organization and the people in it. So I think those are really, really important things in there. There's another thing that I want to throw in that I, particularly in doing my work with Citta, that I've noticed the skill of listening, truly listening. and I have an executive coaching background, so I've been really lucky to learn from a lot of people. But you can never be perfect at listening, and I think constantly nurturing that muscle. And the one more thing, leaning in at the team level. I think that sometimes we can get distracted with organizational performance and individual performance. And actually, I think if we can unlock teams and get teams to be more effective, teams to collaborate better, I just think we then unlock something very special within organizations and just direct the organization in place perhaps they haven't explored yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, some fantastic points there. And what I really liked out of some of those points there, the things you talk about, bravery and confidence and trust and listening, these are things that are quite often sort of ethereal. People will go, but actually recognizing that investment in helping people to understand how to be braver, how to be more confident, that sort of practitioner element of how do you go from saying, right, the thing that's going to help shift the dial is to make our people braver, then actually what can we do about that? That's a great thing to say, but it's I think that people function of firstly identifying that and then saying, here are some of the practical ways in which you can do that. That's a wonderful way to put it.
Can I just intercept very quickly, because we were a team once upon a time, the three of us, right? And Neha's comment just took me back to how important it is to lean on that on that team level, and we collaborated on everything. We had such a phenomenal team culture as well, and everyone was collaborating, supporting one another, and that's what really makes the difference day to day. So thanks Neha for taking us back.
Absolutely. And I just want to build on that practical point. I think bringing it strategic practitioner is an amazing word that Mary used, and I heard enablement from Mary, I heard simplification from Neha. I'm going to bring it down a level. Amongst us three, Neha and Mary are the most strategic, and they're the thinkers, and I'm the doer. Right? So I think from a more practical perspective, for me, the people function as Mary said, it should really make sure that high performance should not be disrupted by lack of basics. So for me, it's sort of like a people or HR related Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? I'm going to take one of my areas, like one of the areas I've been more involved as an example. Let's take rewards as an example, right? Rewards is a basic thing, right? Everybody wants to get paid for their work, right? A lot of companies lead with, we have an amazing bar where you'll get free coffee every day and fruit and free lunches, right? And we have ping pong tables and amazing parties, right? But for me, it's not about that, right? Rewarding employees is it's like building a house, right? Before putting your fancy pictures on the walls, you need to make sure that the foundations are in place, right? So what does that mean in the reward space? Simple things like 3 things for me. Pay aligned to market and fairly, right? It's really easy to get data now, what's fair in the market for any role. Find the data, build your compensation framework correctly, ensure you revise it and you're fair about it, right? Have benefits that make sense, right? Benefits are not the quarterly parties, but key things like health insurance, mental health support, pension plans, all that kind of thing. Maybe have modular benefits so employees can select, and then have recognitions in place. Like the importance of teams is so important, as Nate has put it. So have proper structured performance review, salary cycles. Also have an official ways of recognition, like call outs. Make sure your managers, going back to Nate's point, make sure leaders are leaders that know how to recognize and really, really recognize and call out people, right? Make sure you have that culture that rewards good performance. When all that's in place, go and buy your ping pong table, right? Yeah. Get your ping pong table, get your amazing Arabica coffee, right? From wherever, but make sure that's in place, because without that, any culture you have will fall down, and people won't be performing simply because their basic needs of recognition and being fairly rewarded are not being met.
Oh, amazing 100%. Points there. And I think there's so much within that we just identifying and recognizing the importance of the people function in all of those aspects to help organizations and teams and individuals perform. So there's some wonderful stuff there. And I'm just going to follow up because within the sort of third question in here, which is follows up on those points, Andreas, and maybe we'll point this at you as well, which is around that data element. We can grab data, we can look more at the analytics to support people and support the people function. What's the importance, as you see it, of and the role of data and analytics in the people function and helping organizations and helping people perform in that space?
Yeah, if I had a pound for every time someone asked me the importance of data in people, I wouldn't be doing this podcast. I'd be out gallivanting in New Zealand. I think, look, for me, there's a couple of things. Data is highly, highly important, but also data is not the panacea that everybody thinks it is, right? So I'm gonna break that down. Yeah. Data is highly important in the people space, as it is in any other function of the business, right? Because it allows you to take decisions that are not gut-led. It's as simple as that. We couldn't run a finance department by estimating, right, how much we spend every month, right? Yeah. Saying we can't run a people function without understanding where are we grading performance like, or what are these missing skills. So I think for me, data removes to a degree the gut element from decision making in people, right? But and what tends to be forgotten in the whole data hullabaloo, right, is that we're still dealing with people, right? So I've seen organizations that have data as a panacea, as a fix-it-all, and forget that behind each number, there's a person. Right? So once you do that, right, that is something it's very hard to come back from, right? So for me, in my analytics career, right, I've had to take, a lot of hard decisions based on data. But the vision always that you cannot forget that behind each decision, there is a life, right? There is, families possibly being affected in a positive or a negative way, right? There's just so much that goes into each decision. So if I was to say, how data is important, it's important to make decisions as long as you balance it out with true empathy, true leadership, and true understanding of the number, right? That is highly, highly important for me, and it's become more important as I've grown in my career as well. Perhaps Neha can talk to that as well. She's known me when I was a young teenager, right? Thinking that data can save the world and is everything. But as you mature and as organizations mature with data, I think it's very important that the people function matures at the same time, the same rhythm, understands data properly and uses it in a very, very empathic way.
Right. No, it's a wonderful answer, and I think that recognizing some of those elements from that world of F1 where I was, where it's very data heavy, but actually we talked a lot about data supported decisions or data informed decisions. It's not, if you go too far, it's automated. And it's like the data says this, therefore it's that. And well, why do you need people to make decisions in that case? Because the data just makes the decision for you. So I think it changes the conversation, in my view, of the data says this, why shouldn't we be doing that? And what else do we need to consider, such as the impact on people, the impact on teams and things like that. So yeah, that's my personal view on some of those things. But maybe Mary, what have you got to add in that world in terms of the importance and the role of data in the people function?
I'm by no means an expert in this area like Andreas, but I very much, particularly because of Andreas, I learned to I grew to have a great appreciation for data, and I leverage a lot of different data sources in my role as well. And I mean, I couldn't agree more. You have the information to hand, and that's the science, and then the decision almost becomes the art.
Right.
For example, even just today, I was with one of my vendors. We're doing big reviews and so on, and data would indicate, and that's, some of the recommendations that I was given, data would indicate that you would need to produce more stuff, as Neha referred to, right? And that's a very traditional way of thinking. This is a gap, so let's just produce more stuff, right? And where I'm leading the conversation is, okay, well, that stuff doesn't necessarily need to be tangible. That stuff may be, for example, that mindset piece, right? And that mindset piece may need to be achieved through, exactly, for example, having more conversations or more meaningful conversations. What more stuff do you want to build? Just go and do it sometimes, just again, practicing conversations. I don't encourage anyone to practicing the art of conversation by watching videos about it, whilst there may be a component that will inspire you, or you'll pick up on someone's style and you'll go, oh, I really like that person's style, but then you have to go and do it. Yeah. And that's also kind of where, so I'm so, I mentioned that before, that strategic practitioner. And I think that's where you need to help people practice that as well. But back to the point, yes, data hugely, hugely important, but then a little bit of art needs to come in, how we steer the decision as well.
Brilliant. Couldn't agree more on that front. And what about yourself, Neha? What are your thoughts in this space?
Yeah, I love this topic, and I love it, one, because I am a bit of a data geek and love data, as Andreas knows, but also because it takes me down a really happy path of memory lane, right? So Paul, if I think about when we came to see you and you showed us the data center at the McLaren Center, right? We learned loads from seeing that. Andreas, without embarrassing you, I do think that you are one of the best I've seen in the data space, because if you think about the work that we were doing back then, I think, yes, the technical ability that you bring, but actually the very important point around science and art, and I look at it in with a slightly different angle, but the same, the science, but you were embedding it within our team. So when we were looking at the data, we had perhaps people who weren't as analytical sitting down in the same room as us and going, well, hey, Andreas, how did you get to that? What does that mean? Let's try and kind of break this back down again so that we can tell a story to our business that is helpful to them. And so I think that is so important, that first of all, understanding that it's great to say that more data in the people function is going to help us. Of course it is. But first of all, understand it's a really tough thing to do. So if you're going to do it, really invest in getting the right talent to help you get there. Yeah. Really invest in preparing your stakeholders that this is going to be a bit of a journey to get the right data, the accurate data, the right systems talking to each other. And then I think the point that's been made very clearly by Andreas, that the data is going to give us one side of the story. So actually, when we're ready to present to key stakeholders, let's make sure that we have the right people in the room doing the storytelling, so that actually, full circle back, the people function is seen as very competent, brave, and data-driven in what they're doing as much as they can be. Because my reality is, and Andreas, I'll be honest, I think we had the best and most complete data sets in the work that we were doing, right? Particularly the work we did around diversity. And that was over 5 years ago. I haven't seen data that clean and that complete in a really long time, because, we put a lot of effort into doing that work. And so that has to be replicated. So I love the topic, but I think not underestimating how much it takes.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. I couldn't agree more in this space. And I think the one point in particular that I just circling around in my notes here, which is helping to tell the story. Because people react and people work and will go through change if you tell the story and bring them on that journey of the story as well. And the other bit is around, from a data perspective, one of the key things I learned from the world of F1 is that trusted data is better in a lot of ways than accurate data. Ideally you want the two of them, but if your data is really accurate but not trusted, then it doesn't help you tell that story and doesn't help you sell that. So, some amazing points throughout all of this, and I'm sure we can talk on all sorts of different topics for for a long time. But I just wanted to get a viewpoint, because I always like to talk to my guests about, we talk about helping people perform and the role that you play in helping others perform at their best. But when we switch that back, how do you help yourself perform? How do you keep yourself on top of your game on that front? So maybe, Andreas, let's start with you. What do you do to help yourself be the high performer that you are?
Wasn't ready for that question. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's an area I'm actively working on to do. What I don't do at the moment is leave enough space for myself for self-development and rest and all of the kind of important things that are needed for us to be at our best. It's the people space is an intense space, right? As I said, the last years have been intense. So what I think, again, I go back to my practical side and my example of how we need to enable performance by removing the barriers to performance, right? In terms of the hierarchy of needs. I think that's as important for all of us on this call. And I think I remember back to conversations that we've had with Neha previously in terms of how important self-care is as well, right? At managing yourself. So your very honest answer, right, for your listeners is at the moment I don't have there's not enough space for me to develop to continue developing as time. But what I'm consciously working on is leaving that time for self-care, which would then self-motivate you, right? When you have the basics in place, the self-care, it would then motivate you up that pyramid to continue learning and to continue development, which we have to do in our profession, just like any other profession, right? Our profession is running at really fast speeds, right? What we knew 5 years ago, 3 years ago, no longer stands, right? So my own advice to myself is make that time for self-care, which will then enable me to keep developing as a professional.
Such an amazing point in terms of the initial recognition as well, and the self-reflection on what it is we should be doing, but also saying that this is something I am going to be consciously making effort to do. So, what about yourself, Mary? What are some of the things that you do to help yourself perform at your best?
Paul, I'm no poster child. But again, we're all evolving, and so long we evolve, that's a good thing. So first of all, keep yourself hydrated. Health, cheers. First and foremost. Yeah, cheers, Paul. There we go. Andreas made the point beautifully, so I don't want to parrot it too much, but health, I mean, sounds like a cliche, but without that, anything else just falls apart. A couple of other things I would say that I do. Well, I obviously learn all the time, and mostly from my mistakes. I also like to learn from other people's mistakes. So be observant, because you don't always have to go onto that same route. Just watch it, pay attention, and if you see how it ends, just don't go there, because we're not really that exceptional. If it's happened to someone before, if I go there as well, it will happen to me most likely as well. And again, then I would just encourage everyone really to find their own thing, because something that works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. I love finding ways to just entertain myself in my daily routine, and that can take different shapes and forms, but I have my ways. Some of them are secret, so but I love to laugh and smile as well, and I always have. And sometimes I think some people think I'm completely mad, and that's also fine. But I love to just keep my good energy going. I try to remove myself from situations, not from situations, but I think when you mature, you realize that you have more to say maybe than what you think when you're younger, in terms of the people that you let into your life, both personally and professionally as well. So I think, if something doesn't serve you well, then maybe it's time to let go, But again, health, learning, and laughing and smiling.
Wonderful things we can all focus on that front. And what
Find
about
your own thing. Find your own thing.
Find your own thing. That's the key, I think, to all of this is it's finding the thing that works for you. And what about yourself, Neha? What are some of the things that you do to help yourself perform there?
So all of those things, but what I would say, I'm in a real situation right now where I'm out of my comfort zone, right? I'm really trying to be brave and take on this new endeavor. And so I've been paying more attention actually to how am I learning, how am I pushing myself to that next level of performance, and a couple of things come to mind. And I think Andreas definitely touched on this one, but this resonates for me, the kind of the space, finding space to just be focused. So other people will call it focus time.
Yeah.
Right. So space to focus. And actually that's the basis of actually my consultancy organization. When I talk to clients, it's about, let me help you find space to do the important thinking. So actually doing that to myself, finding the space to do some important thinking. But actually the other thing that I shouldn't be surprised by, because I have been very blessed in my career, coming across amazing team members, and it's the network. Right. Actually, people are so generous with their thinking time, with their lessons learned, and people's desire to help you be better. And I think, Mary, the point you make about deciding who is part of your world, your performance sphere, if you like, the people that are brave enough to challenge you on your thinking, the people that actually are kind enough to give up time, help you to figure out how to do something random like minimize a logo so it works on LinkedIn, which was a real example from just a couple of weeks ago. But I think that for me is something to constantly hold on to, that there is such an incredible network of people that you can learn great stuff from. Of course, you can learn the other side of things where things haven't been so great. But I just get a lot of energy from just learning from people that I go, God, they're so brilliant at that. I wonder if they would give me some time and help me to learn a little bit about how they do it.
That's certainly been one of the key lessons I've learned throughout this whole podcasting experience, as well as my career in general, which is, ask people, lean into, they've done it in the past. What have they learned from that experience? What can they give advice on? It won't be exactly cut and paste for my needs, but it's something that I can, what I like to call, I can adapt and then adopt if it serves the purpose, should we say? Yeah. So, I mean, this conversation could, as I say, could last for for hours, I'm sure. But I just wanted to see if there's one key point from each of you in terms of what's the one key thing that you would leave the audience with today in terms of this conversation about, we talk about helping people perform. What's the one key point that that stood out for you in this conversation that we've had today? Who would like to? Let's go for a volunteer this time. Who wants to start us off?
I'm happy to start. Yeah, I'll start, and then
Thanks, Andreas.
for me it's easy, right? I think, as again, everything that we said today is really, really important, and I think the one thing that sticks with me as well, Nay has mentioned it, Mary's mentioned it, simplification, right? Again, it does not have to be difficult. You do not need the latest tools, right? The latest crazy theories. You need to keep things simple, and you need to remove the simple pain points that all people experience. Again, at the end of the day, we've said this, right? People are people, they're not numbers. And everybody wants basic things, right? In their work. Yes, there are generational debates that currently rage that I don't really believe in, right? I think all generations look for something very, very similar, right? And I think if we simplify things and make sure those pain points are taken away, then our performance will shine. If someone's got it in them, it will come out and will shine.
Thanks so much, Andreas. That's
Beautiful.
an amazing point. Ladies, Mary, what about yourself? What's one key point you'd like to leave the audience with?
I'll offer something on an individual level. Again, it's within your gift. Decide, try and test different things for yourself personally. What works, as Andrea said, keep it simple, but just I encourage everyone to just test and try what works and what doesn't work for them day to day, appreciating that something that works today may not work next month, and so on. So I think that would be it, Paul.
No,
there's a lot that we grounded that we covered today. Yeah, that would be it, I think.
Wonderful stuff. And Neha, what about yourself? What's one key point from you?
So yes, keep it simple, but I also think be brave and try and be a little bit bold and different too, because that will keep you curious and keep you learning.
Brilliant. Wonderful stuff. And I really appreciate all three of you being on the show today. So to wrap this up, I just want to encourage my audience, as I always do. If you've heard some great stuff, if you're intrigued to find out more, then do reach out to the guests here. So maybe Mary, how do people reach out, and where do they find you if they want to reach out and connect from here?
Yeah, sure, I'd be delighted. Look, I'm on LinkedIn and occasionally joining different podcasts as well and conferences to share some thoughts and insights. So find me somewhere in the universe, and let's start with LinkedIn.
Brilliant. What about yourself, Neha?
The same. I would say let's start with LinkedIn. I am very, very excited to keep expanding the network. So I absolutely welcome people getting in touch. If there's anyone out there that I can learn more from about building my own consultancy, I would also love that. So let's definitely connect.
Wonderful. And Andreas?
Absolutely echo that. All I would say is if you reach out to one of us, do not forget that you're probably going to get 3 for the price of 1, as you did on this podcast. We're very much aligned. We're so excited for Neha starting her own thing, and we want to help her as well as much as possible. So you will be getting the whole group and our full experience. But yeah, as a main person, as I said, LinkedIn is the one professional network I use. And I will be in London next month. If anybody, or this month actually, not next month, in a couple of weeks. So anybody wants to grab a coffee, please feel free to reach out.
Wonderful stuff. And as always with my guests, all of those contact details, those LinkedIn links will be in the show notes, so you can go and reach out. And I do encourage my audience to do reach out. And as you say, what a bargain, a 3-for-1 trifecta there. You can't ask for more value than that. So it's been an amazing chat and so much to learn in this whole space. But thank you so much. I can see why not only as individuals you're high performing and help others perform, but actually as a team, I can see and feel the energy in terms of how you have brought those skill sets together to help others perform and shift that to a whole new level. So thanks so much for being on the show today, Mary, Neha, and Andreas.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Paul.
Paul.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Neha.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.